Today we are in City Hall. It was a lively and emotional and a very loud meeting last night at Nanaimo City Council. We're going to talk about that on this edition of Go. On today's show, the Bully Files, sharing stories at the Gulf Islands Film and Television School, leather creations on Gabriola, and a tour of the Ladysmith Harbour. That and more in the next 30 minutes. 4 hours of discussion about Colliery Dam at last night's, that's Monday, June the 11th, council meeting. We're going to recap some of that discussion on this edition of Go Island. It's an unfortunate reality that bullying exists, and as a parent whose kids are just entering the school system, I am absolutely terrified. Sucheta Singh heads to Galliano Island now for a look at how the Gulf Islands Film and Television School is addressing the issue. For more information or to apply to the Bully Files, you can visit www.gifts.com. You are watching Go Island on Shaw TV Channel 4. We're inside the Mayor's office at City Hall, recapping last night's City Council meeting. That's Monday, June the 11th. It timed out at 11 o'clock, 40 delegations on the Colliery Dams, and it got a little bit ugly. There was a lot of yelling, a lot of screaming. I did not envy any of you in your seats there.
Well, you know, there's some very emotional people there, and people were very passionate about the issue. No question about that. But, you know, I think most of the angst seemed to be around the fact that there was concern, and I don't think it could ever be, but there was concern that the plan is to take the dams down and not rebuild them. And so my understanding is most of the people understand the risk is there, and something has to be done to remediate the dams, and they are just concerned that we're not going to go ahead. But you know, the motion that was made and supported was that the two dams be brought down, and then the dams will be rebuilt. And it was a further caveat in the motion that in the lower Chase Dam, the lower dam, to build in a capability of later putting in a power generator source. It's too costly at this time to do it and put in generation right now. But when the dam is rebuilt, it will have an area so that it can be retrofitted later to put in a generator and generate power, which would be sold to BC Hydro.
The City of Nanaimo has not been ordered to take the dams down by the Dam Safety Branch. And is there a bit of a calling from those opposed to the removal that you wait to be told that it has to be done? Well,
they haven't ordered the dams to be taken down, but they do want them dewatered, drained if you want, by December 31st, 2013. And so to simply drain them without taking them down really doesn't solve any problems whatsoever. In fact, it only exacerbates an already difficult situation by leaving an eyesore there. So what we want to do is deconstruct them during the summertime in the fisheries window that's allowed, and then do the planning in the fall of this year for the rebuild and start rebuilding them in 2014.
Is there anything that the city can do to alleviate some of those worries that words at this point to rebuild are more than just words, and the intention is a reality, will be a reality?
And I can understand the concern, I really can. But I think what last night a number of people said, well, you haven't even got the permits in place, so how do we know you're going there? And you know, our position clearly is that until we got the final vote and Council supported it, there was no point in going out in advance and getting all these permits and so on and spending a lot of staff time and money to do that. So now that we do have a passed motion to issue tenders for the deconstruction, we can go ahead and do that. And then, of course, in due course, the necessary permits will be obtained, and we'll start with the deconstruction.
And that will start as early as the end of July, early August?
It could hopefully be earlier than that, and it's going to be dependent entirely on the DFO, the Department of Fisheries window. They'll provide a start and stop date for us, and we're going to have to work within that period of time, and it will be a challenge, but I mean, that's what our intent is at this point.
And that's another, there's going to be more activity in Colliery Dams Park for the, from the people who are opposed to the removal of the dams. We're going to talk about some of the legal happenings that have been taking place around that predicted and planned protests that are going to be going on. How hard is it, maybe more from a personal perspective, to sit in front of a very angry crowd of people? and do what you know, what you believe to be right, but isn't popular with the people that are literally yelling at you.
Well, there were some people that took the position, why don't you just do nothing and wait till the Dam Safety Branch, which is a provincial entity, orders it down and in fact starts the process of doing it. But the reality is those dams belong to the city of Nanaimo, and there are dams, and therefore the cost to remediate them belongs with us. People want the province to pay. I would really love to have the province pay for them. But the reality is they won't pay for our dams, and we don't pay for some of their issues either. So it's just not going to happen. So the reality is we've got to kind of bite the bullet and get on with it. And I just feel that we were elected to make some tough choices.
Not an easy decision to make, especially in front of 4 delegations dedicated to preserving the colliery dams and definitely opposed to their removal. We're going to talk more about that later on this edition of Go Island. But first, we're switching gears entirely. Jocelyn Matwee is introducing you now to a woman who has always loved to take little bits of leather and rearrange them and then call it art. Still ahead today on Go Island, touring the Ladysmith Harbour aboard the Maritimer, and Dan Kahn on happiness. That and more still to come today on Go Island. You're watching Go Island on Shaw TV Channel 4. We're here in Nanaimo Mayor John Ruttan's office talking about Monday night's council meeting. 40 delegations, all opposed to the removal of the colliery dams. A very lively, a very loud, it wasn't very pleasant to watch is all I can say. We've talked a bit about how it's gotten to the stage that it's at. What's next? There was a court case on Monday morning.
Well, the city is in the process of filing an injunction. I believe it's going to be heard by the courts on the 2nd of July.
And what are you trying to stop from happening? What does that
Well, basically, we want people to understand that we're not trying to restrict anyone from protesting or showing any kind of display against the decision. They have every right to do that. What we don't want them to do is try to interfere with the construction process itself. We're going to see if we can find an area nearby where they could stand and gather and stage a civil and respectful protest. They're certainly welcome to do that. But if they're going to try to block heavy equipment and put their own lives in danger as well as that of the equipment operators, then we will service the injunction on them and have them removed, because there's a tight time window we've got to work with, and we need to get this thing done. And while we respect their right to protest, it has to be done safely.
Safety is a big thing. Is that kind of like saying, you're allowed to speak up, but only if you speak up in the way that we allow you to? That is, in essence, what you're saying.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that, but there's a bigger picture here, and there's the reality of safety. People would seem to easily forget the fact that those dams are unsafe.
Do you think people are willing to go to jail for these dams?
They may. I mean, and that would be their choice. I would certainly prefer they did not, but they certainly may feel that this is the way they want to get their message off, and that would be their choice to do. I think that, when you look at the bigger picture, we're going to take those dams down, and then we're going to rebuild them. And there'll be a short-term destruction around the area. I think in 2 or 3 years, a lot of the scars will be gone, and people will be really pleased with what they see.
Have you been surprised by the level of the outcry, the consistency and the persistence? It's grown a lot.
It's grown a lot. Yeah, to a certain extent. It's just that this is a difficult one for me. If we were taking those dams down and we're going to build a shopping center there, or if we were going to build a bowling alley or some other, but we are taking them down because of safety. This isn't a land grab, this isn't expansion, and we are going to keep the park there. There's no question about that. The park around it, in fact, will even be enlarged. So those concerns are really unfounded, because they will have a wonderful area when it's finished. But we just need to work with the time we've got and make sure that I think they'll be pleased when they see the end.
Thank you. We're going to come back and talk a little bit about the process of in-camera meetings on this edition of Go Island with Nanaimo Mayor John Ruttan. We are heading now to Ladysmith, though. Every year, hundreds of thousands of people descend upon that little city, but the locals are going to tell you that it's the harbour that is the heart of that city. I had an opportunity to take a road trip there last week. You can experience the Ladysmith Harbour and more in the Be a Hometown Tourist event that is coming to Ladysmith June 15th and 16th. That's this coming weekend. And for full details, you can visit www.take5.ca/hometown tourist. And here now is your Get Up and Go community calendar with a few other events that you might want to take in. You're watching Go Island on Shaw TV Channel 4. We're in conversation with Nanaimo Mayor John Ruttan. We're going to move away from the colliery dams now just for a moment. They will come back onto the agenda, no doubt, in the not too distant future. In-camera meetings, always a point of discussion. A lot of people complain that it stops transparency from city business. First of all, what is an in-camera meeting?
Well, an in-camera meeting basically is where the council and senior staff have the opportunity to discuss items that they think are confidential in nature and really cannot be shared with the public at that point. And traditionally it's the 3 L's, labor, land, and litigation. Litigation, obviously, if there's a lawsuit pending or in currently taking place, we can't discuss that if it's before the courts. Land, if we're looking at acquiring a piece of land, advance notice going out to the public could make that land more attractive and impair the price, impact the price rather. And of course, the labor issue deals with staff. And so we try not to get issues dealing with staff into the public. But I think the important feature is that we are changing our policy now. We recognize that there's a need to release particularly older agendas that were in camera. A lot of them dealt with items like land. The land either was acquired or wasn't. And at this point, that information could be made public. How relevant it is after the fact is kind of a moot point, but we still want to release as much as we can. We're going through a process right now with senior staff to ensure if there's any way we can release the information in a more timely fashion.
Thank you. One of the things I'm realizing, like in-camera meetings, it seems so clear, so black and white, 3 L's, but like everything in politics, nothing seems absolutely black and white. John, thank you for your time today. I certainly don't envy any of the councillors sitting, having to make these decisions on a daily basis. We're going to throw things down to Victoria now. Dan Kahn is hitting the streets to find out, are you happy? What does it take to be happy? Well, what makes me happy is some sunshine in the middle of June, but Derek Johnstone's behind the camera today, and he's very happy with today's particular lighting. That brings us to the end of this edition of Go Island. We do have a conversation with Nanaimo Mayor John Ruttan on the Tuesday following every Monday's council meeting. If you'd like to provide some feedback or have some questions that you'd like us to pose on your behalf, you can email me, kate.bergen@sjrb.ca. Thanks for watching this edition of Go Island. We'll see you next time in the sunshine, hopefully.